Douluo continent, Star Do Great Forest. One of the three most famous settlements of soul beasts in Douluo continent. The area is huge. The land area is almost equal to that of the Barak Kingdom, spanning the borders of the Heaven Do Empire and the Star Luo Empire, of which 2/5 of the land area is in the Heaven Do Empire. The other 3/5 are in the Xingluo Empire, a huge virgin forest with complex terrain. There are wetlands, swamps and so on. The soul beast there is also extremely terrifying. The closer it is to the center of the forest, the stronger the soul beast. There are even 100,000-year-old soul beasts inside. Any soul master, as long as he has enough strength and good luck, can find the most suitable soul ring in it. An Uchiha uranium stood in the outermost bushes of the Star Do forest, staring into the forest. Behind the bushes, there are towering woods that gradually become strange, and there are soul beasts that represent death. Is also in it. Was very surprised why he stood here, but it was his own choice. Since Wuhan awakened, his parents suddenly fell ill at a certain time, very suddenly and unexpectedly. In fact, it is not a serious illness, it is nothing more than fatigue, nausea, dizziness, and insomnia. But after opening the awakened martial spirit again, he felt something was wrong, or that the family had already made him feel uncoordinated from the beginning. His surname is Uchiha, this is okay, but the problem is, this is Douluo mainland. As he grows up, he also understands the history of the family. His ancestor is a powerful-eyed martial soul titled Douluo, who has mastered a lot of self-made spirit abilities of the flame nature, as well as many special secret abilities, but due to the age, or because it has been hidden for a long time, it is no longer present. Although there are ancestors, it is clear that the origin of the ancestors is not recorded in the slightest. This is also a point that shocked Uchiha. He was the second to cross, and his ancestor was the first to cross. It's just that it's a bit outrageous that Shaol Yuanyan was directly assimilated into a martial arts soul, but when I thought of Douluo continent, there is a god realm, and there are other worlds outside of the god realm, so I don't feel that much. After all, no one can tell about this thing. It's all here, so you can only say that. When he was 6 years old, he also directly started a separate martial arts awakening ceremony in the family. The process went smoothly. He successfully awakened his martial soul. Unfortunately, he was not a twin martial soul, but he was surprised. He awakened. The Writing Wheel Eye martial arts spirit seems to be different from the rest of the family. The specific method is different, Uchiha Uranus is not clear. In the eyes of others, the Gojade in his eyeballs does not seem to be a Gojade shape, but a similarly reduced version of a fan's-shaped icon, with a rounded and protruding head and a sunken inside. However, compared to other people, his father was very happy, calling it a mutant martial soul. He also said that the family has not appeared a mutant martial soul for a long time, and the 2 mutant martial souls that have appeared in the past are extremely a powerful and special existence, and today, he is fortunate to see the birth of a new mutant martial arts soul in the family, and he is still his own child. He is very happy and asked the family historian to write down this moment in history. But with the awakening of Wuhan, it was also the beginning of a nightmare. I don't know when, it seems that the maid's low-grade fever, or the servant's unprovoked coma, caused a strange change in the whole family, that is, the family members are so easy to get sick. Unknown changes appeared. With fever, more and more people became weak. The patriarch, Uchiha Uranium's father, Uchiha Dake stepped forward. Whether it is a healing soul master or a tonic, these foreign objects are used. It can only be delayed, or temporarily suppressed, not cured. Uchiha Dake is completely helpless in this situation, which is neither poison nor martial arts means. No matter how precise his writing wheel is, he can't see what changes are happening inside the human body. He treats the soul master's diagnosis. I also confirmed that the body of these servants with low spirit power was deteriorating. It seems that a certain threshold has been reached. One night, the servant who fell into a coma at the earliest began to vomit violently, high fever, bleeding, and anemia of varying degrees, as if tortured. These few servants with low spirit power were suffering the pain of imagination. At the same time, while Uchiha was looking in the mirror, he opened the martial arts writing wheel and observed the peculiar jade shape in his pupils, and gradually developed a bad premonition in his heart. A single-shaped fan-shaped icon. The outer circle is convex and the inner circle is concave. A single icon can't explain much. But if you look at it according to the three Gyu, it rotates in the pupil in the shape of a product, like a fan. Yeah, but to be precise, it is more like some kind of warning sign on the earth in the past life. What is it? Reminiscent of the weak servant being in a coma, general fatigue, vomiting, high fever, Uchiha suddenly thought that these symptoms only slowly appeared after he awakened his martial soul and awakened this peculiar pattern. And this pattern may be the culprit that brought these negative factors, or that his mutant martial spirit may not be developing in a good direction, but in a deteriorating direction. What exactly is it? What do these symptoms represent in previous lives? Is it poisonous? Or is there cancer? Wait, you reading www.yuyugonshu.com Cancer. It seems that something has been thought of. Uchiha Uranus feels as if he has grasped the point. Following this line of thought, continue to think about whether there is something inside their body. Stimulus response, and cancers such as a lot of sweating, fatigue, vomiting and other symptoms can indeed be compared with the current situation. Then, what is the incentive? Unknowingly, Uchiha looked in the mirror again, looking at herself in the mirror, her silver white hair naturally flowing to her ears, her fair skin with a healthy blush, and the pair of rotating single Gyu writing wheel eyes. Everything seemed so natural, but with a touch of weirdness. My own eyes, the more they look like an icon. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. If the whites of his eyes were yellow, would it match this black fan-shaped Gyu better? Warning icon? I know. The young man was silent for a while. It shouldn't be wrong. If it is that thing, it is indeed against the panic-stricken family. Although there is currently no spirit master with a higher spirit power level in a coma, I am afraid that these days after that, the family has been infected 7 or 88. If this continues, I am afraid that all of them will die someday. I will not be surprised. Uchiha Uranus raised his head and said to himself. Speaking slowly, he stood up and began to pack up his clothes. It's not wrong. His eyes would make everyone around him die in pain, and now, he wants to leave this home, he has to leave immediately. His eyes reminded him thoroughly. He had seen this fan-shaped icon very rarely, but every time he saw such a warning, he would immediately stay away for fear of being contaminated. That is nuclear radiation. He encountered a fork in the road. No, it is not a fork road, this kind of natural, no human existence in the Soul Beast Forest. There is no road that has been stepped on by humans. In front of him, there are actually only 2 forest trails that can be walked on, but the degree of danger is unknown. Is this, the left or the right? Uchiha frowned. Although there is no soul beast right now, race against time is a necessary way. It is noon now, which is still safe. Once nightfall, all kinds of terrifying carnivorous soul beasts start hunting, and it may be difficult to resist with their current situation. But if you go the wrong way and unknowingly walk into the soul beast's nest, it will be too embarrassing. Left. After hesitating for a moment, Uchiha Uranus decided to change his lane slightly and move on like left. Because the ground is very muddy, the surrounding vine roots, fallen leaves and difficult slippery stones make him move very slowly, and the sun in the sky is getting more and more vicious. If it were not for the dense foliage, I am afraid his delicate skin has already begun. It hurts. He has become a little accustomed to the unpleasant smell in the air. He really didn't expect that the Star-Do Great Forest actually has such a landform environment as a wetland and swamp. He originally thought it was all trees and forests. I guess this place is also looking for if there is no clean living water source, even if there is, it will be the place where many spirit beasts must pass. At the latest tonight, they will begin to survive in the wild. Water, food, shelter. He has not achieved any of the three elements of survival so far. Uchiha can only hope that the next road will be easier. The food and water sources are not very worried. The Space Soul Guidance device will have enough food for him for at least 10 days, which is really difficult for him. Still nowhere to sleep. He was really a little afraid that he would go to sleep as soon as he slept and woke up in the belly of a certain spirit beast the next day. Isn't it said that the Star Do Great Forest is a heaven of soul beasts? How come you have not seen the soul beast for more than 2 hours? After a while, Uchiha Uranus found a relatively clean stone with a slightly flat top and climbed up, sat on it and began to rest. The doubt that the soul beast disappeared for no reason still stayed in his heart and did not dissipate. This is absolutely abnormal. Compared to the forest, the density of the soul beast is definitely higher. Even if he is slow, he will not think that the forest without the soul beast is normal. There is definitely something wrong with it. Is it really in the territory of high-level spirit beasts? After thinking about it, Uchiha Uranus can only draw this conclusion. There is no way. According to current observations, there is only this reason, but this possibility it's not too high either. High-level soul beasts have to eat well. Now I can't meet even a low-level herbivorous soul beast. Is it possible that this high-level soul beast drinks northwest wind? Where is the problem? Forget it, don't think about it, hurry up and eat something, and then go on. He has been around this place for more than 2 hours, and he hasn't eaten anything yet. Here, food and water should be eaten when he can't hold on, but he seems to overestimate his endurance. Eating is a simple naan made of dried meat, nuts, flour, eggs, and seasonal vegetables. It is very large, about 60 centimeters wide, and round, thin on both sides, 2 to 3 centimeters thick, and about 6 centimeters thick in the middle. Storage resistant, he turned it out in the kitchen at home. It tastes very good, but you need to chew it carefully. At his age, if he eats quickly, he will accidentally lose his teeth and he has a small appetite. It is conservatively estimated that such a piece of cake will be enough for him to eat for 2 to 3 days. After eating for a quarter of an hour, Uchiha burped with satisfaction, and then took out a few sips of water. At this point, the rest time is over and he wants to continue walking forward. Right now, this place is not suitable for night rest. The ground is all it is sludge water, unless you sleep on a tree. Packed up, turned over and walked off the boulder, and continued to walk forward. Push away the obstructing plant, use a sharp machete to split the thorns, tear off the webs entangled on the body, and pat off the slippery moss. Uchiha walked in this uninhabited jungle, trying to open a path for walking. The dense jungle that covered the sky in front of him suddenly became rare and sparse, gradually revealing the blue sky. The sound of the river flowing gradually became clear, and a small river appeared in the boy's field of vision soon after. Both sides of the river are covered with lush, unknown plants. The water is not turbulent, but the water quality is a bit turbid. The dark green floating algae floats on the surface of the water, moving forward with the water, and it is hard to see how deep this small river is. But the river was a bit wide, and he didn't use any tools, it was difficult to pass the river. From the eyes of the boy, he knew that this river was not for him to pass. There are no trees growing on both sides, and he can't move the decayed tree trunks to build a bridge, not to mention the danger in the water is unknown. He did not dare to set foot in the river easily, and this river can nourish so many floating algae, it must be the eutrophication of the water body, and the floating algae cover the water surface, the algae blooming will make the water deprived of oxygen. In this river, ordinary fish can't live. There is no artificial salvage here. According to this situation, all the river surface has not been covered. Among them, there must be herbivorous soul beasts that feed on floating algae. There are herbivorous soul beasts, and there should be carnivores. I'm afraid I can't drink this river. There are too many impurities in the water and the water is muddy. Uchiha Uranus knew that there was nothing on his body that could filter the water source, and it was difficult to achieve safe and pollution-free eating with the filtering method he knew, but this river is the only source of water found so far. If he waits for the clean water source he carries to drink light, I'm afraid no matter how dirty, I have to pinch my nose and drink it. How to do it? Uchiha Uranium looked at this turbid river, and then looked around and there was nothing worth borrowing. The environment across the river was a bit tangled for a while. Is it to risk crossing the river, or to return far away? After a while, Uchiha made a decision and could not return. Otherwise, all his time would be wasted searching for the road. He had to walk along the edge of the river. This area is the area of the soul beast for 10 to 100 years. Based on his physical fitness and the spirit ability is enough to face most of the dangers. Moreover, the water source is the place where the creatures must pass. If you can meet the soul beast, you can directly live in the ready-made lair along the traces, completely saving yourself a series of trivial tasks such as creating a shelter and delimiting a safe area. Confirmed the route, Uchiha Uranus began to move on. He did not walk directly by the river, but a little distance away, to ensure a certain degree of safety. The surrounding trees seem to be close to the water source. The trunks and roots are covered with moss, which is very slippery. If you are a young man, you can climb the slippery, tall, and bulging roots. There is a risk of falling. What's more, there is a heavy package on his back. Uchiha Uranus walked carefully along the river. The river is gurgling and drifting with duckweed and floating algae. The two banks are lush and the vegetation is quite dense. After he walked for about 2 hours, the sky was getting darker. The surface of the river gradually widened, the water quality gradually became clear, and the ground began to have a bit of hardness. Not only was the river widened, but the trees on both sides became sparse. The dense vegetation was replaced by weeds and bushes, the tall woods receded, direct sunlight came in, and the hot and humid air was blown away by cool gusts. Uchiha Uranus looked back, looked at the road opened behind him, and the complex and twisted roots of the trees and vines, and then looked at the refreshing forest lake in front of him, and he could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. Sure enough, he guessed right. Since it is living water, it must have a source. Find the source, it must be clean water. He has had enough of this muddy ground with 1 foot and 1 pit. It finally came out. It's really strange that this wetland rainforest environment does not even have flying insects. No, this place, this water source location, how can there not even be a soul beast drinking water? Around this forest lake, you can clearly see the footprints of beasts, but what is creepy is that there is nothing around. It is not like a soul beast heaven, more like a lifeless hell. Where am I? Is really lacking enough information to make him unable to make a judgment. Uchiha Uranus doesn't understand why there is no soul beast in the soul beast forest. It is impossible to talk like there is no wife in the wife cake, right? It was getting late, and after an afternoon on the road, he was also exhausted. This is not an ordinary walk. He has been walking through the dense jungle. The air is extremely hot and humid, and the trees and vines are entangled. Stumble. Foot on the ground was very soft, and the ground near the water source was a pit 1 step at a time. The accumulation of rotting leaves and the slippery roots of the autumn tree all made his progress greatly slow down and made him consume too much energy. Being able to last until the night is already considered a spirit ring, because it has strengthened physical fitness. Uchiha Uran's eyes were slightly fixed, and he scanned the surroundings. After a while, he found a place that seemed to be okay. But when he was planning to set up camp, his eyes swept to another location. A large tree with slender but very dense leaves was broken at the waist. The crown fell to the ground, and the branches and leaves on both sides fell on both sides and exposed in the middle. A natural hole. Above and on the back are dense thick leaves. Uchiha touched the leaves. It was a bit dry and not as wet as expected. The broken part and the small half are connected together, forming a perfect triangle in front of him, and the position of the canopy is a very ideal residence. It's just that this kind of shelter can't stay for a long time. It's close to the water source and the ground is moist. If you sleep for a long time, it's easy to get cold, but you can use it tonight. Without further ado, Uchiha immediately began to sort out the shelter, pruning some prominent branches and leaves to make this natural hole less than 3 square meters high and more than 1 meter flat. Then with a machete, a thick-legged branch was cut and stood at the break of the big tree to prevent it from suddenly collapsing in the middle of the night. Then he took out a roll of snow-white, light-looking cloth from the package, which looked more like some kind of soul beast skin, crystal clear, with a tanned and specially processed fragrance. Uchiha spread the leather roll on the ground. Finally, the most critical step is to arrange a night watch trap. Shelter can indeed make him rest comfortably, but rest does not mean safety. The Douluo Great Forest does not have a completely safe place. As long as he dares to sleep without protective measures, passing spirit beasts dare to add a supper to himself. But at the moment when the sky is dim and there is no light source, it is difficult for him to rely on the surrounding environment to make simple traps. But if he doesn't have certain confidence, he dare to do things like going to the Douluo Great Forest to survive? His confidence comes from his first century-old spirit ring. The first spirit ability, Radiation Trap. Uchiha Uranus silently said in his heart, feeling the soul power in his body beginning to be consumed, gathering towards his own hand. It seems that the power has reached the apex, he can no longer feel other consumption, that is to say, he has completed the trap creation in his hand. Next, just throw it out to complete the trap production. His spirit ability was not originally called a radiation trap, but a burst trap. After he awakened his spirit and activated his 10th level of full spirit power, his father quickly helped him obtain the first spirit ring. The spirit beast killed at that time was called the Onion beast, which was good at using ground stab traps to prey, and used his whole body hard. A carapace defense, a soul beast that can breathe flames. This soul beast is very rare. It is a variant of the rare soul beast Dungia beast. Originally, his father's hope was to use his blood affinity for flames to awaken him and breathe the flames of the spirit ability, but in the end, he obtained it. It is the making of traps. This spirit ability allows him to create an invisible and extremely explosive ground stab trap. It can only be placed above a complete space of 1 square meter. After it is placed, the ground stab trap will sink into the ground within 3 seconds. From the surface there is absolutely no problem. However, once a certain weight of creature walks on the top of the ground spur trap, it will fly out from the bottom to the top of the hot ground spurs containing unstable explosive properties, as well as high-speed raids, explosions, high temperatures, spikes and other properties. The scope of the explosion is very large, and the area caused by a ground thorn is more than 10 square meters. Once it explodes, it will be accompanied by high-temperature flame splashing and splashing red fragments. The effect is almost the same as that of modern high-explosive grenade, even it's better in some ways. It's a pity that the range is very large, but the ground stab trap is still a 1-second time difference from induction to activation to launch. As long as the creatures in this range run fast enough, they can completely escape the maximum damage range. It can be said to be high latency, high a model of injury. As for why it is now called radiation trap? That's because after opening his mutated martial soul, the Radiant Eye, the trap became a radiation source that continuously emitted radioactive microwave particles. The effect is still the same as before, but it adds a new property: radioactive elements. That is to say, once it explodes, the ground thorn trap will cause great radiation pollution to the surroundings. No matter what it is, no one can escape. As for the extent of this range, Uchiha Uranus has not tested it, and it should not be small. So the trap he will set next is this. The first trap, he placed it at the back of the shelter, in front of the leaves, to prevent the soul beast from throwing himself to death directly from the front. The second trap was placed at the back of the left, and the third was placed at the front of the right. Finally, he marked the 3 positions to prevent him from accidentally stepping on it. The trap was blown up. Although he is not afraid of radiation, the hot spikes do not recognize people. After all this was done, Uchiha Uranus felt that his soul power had been exhausted. At this time, the last bit of residual heat from the sun disappeared on the horizon. Night is coming. Uchiha Uranus looked at the darkened surroundings, and somehow, a feeling of loneliness surged in his heart. He was still studying in his family half a month ago, and after half a month of traveling, he finally arrived at the Douluo Great Forest. He obviously didn't feel this way on the road before, but now, Ruiwoa's sourness is fermenting in his heart. He knows that now he is really far away from the crowd. The family, partners, father and mother are all no longer around, only oneself. Forget it, don't think about this sad thing, and I don't want to radiate the mutated martial soul of the eye, so that I will not even be able to find my wife in the future. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com. Damn, even if I go to prostitute, maybe once she touched the girl, her whole body rotted to death. Uchiha shook his head, looked at the deserted surroundings, and couldn't help but sigh. He raised his head, looked at the night, heard the wolf howling from far away, and then looked at the sky. Stars shining in the sky, twinkling and twinkling. This is a beautiful scenery that he could not see in his previous life. He once thought that the stars he saw in his childhood would never come back. Heavy industry, air pollution, etc., completely covered the night with a grey veil, but now, he is lying on the ground, leaning against the big tree, looking at the night sky with blurred eyes, as if he had regained his childhood. I don't know how long it took. Uchiha Uranus felt a little moist on the tip of his nose, and wanted to rub his nose, then raised his head, a drop of dew dripped from the top of his head. The night view of the sky is still shining, and the light is even worse. The stars that could not be seen in the day are now flashing as if they are fighting. He has never seen such a scene on the earth. Perhaps this is his lost childhood. And Douluo continent is his newborn. For the first time, Uchiha Uranus felt that it was a correct decision for him to come to the Douluo Great Forest. If he had been in the clan, he would study during the day and practice at night, gradually become stronger and become famous. Maybe he will never again raise his head and watch this beautiful night sky carefully. For the first time, he felt that this kind of life might not be as bad as he thought. Sleepy, sleepy, let's go to sleep. He stretched, took off his dirty shoes, placed them outside, and then went into the shelter. Before going to bed, Uchiha looked at the night sky for the last time, then lay down, closed his eyes, and hibernated quietly. If you live like this in the future, that's not bad. At the corner of his mouth, a faint smile evoked. Early the next morning, the sun shines on the shelter, and through the layers of branches and leaves, the spot-like light shines on Uchiha's face with a soft and warm breath, awakening him from sleep. To his surprise, he originally thought that his first night would be spent in tension and anxiety. After all, this is the periphery of the dangerous Douluo forest. But the fact is that he slept soundly, without the slightest anxiety or fear, as if this place is as safe as home, no difference. A quarter of an hour later, Uchiha Uranus packed up his clothes, tightened his belt, and prepared to start the journey that continues today. Although this place is very good, the water source is clean and close to him, and such a large forest lake, then a large amount of groundwater in this area must be concentrated here, so within a certain range, he must be unable to find a second one. A large water source. But this place is too open, there is a large area of open space. If it is to build a house, that would be more appropriate, but his ability is not enough to live here. The water source is the gathering place of soul beasts, and he is not sure to deal with many souls. The beast, the trap is easy to use, but the soul beast is not crowded and sent forward. In the final analysis, his ability is not enough. Uchiha supported the broken tree and began to observe the surroundings. He wanted to find a thick terrain, preferably a dwelling such as a cave, and then there was a water source around it, preferably some weak herbivorous soul beasts. Among them, such shelter from wind and rain, there is a place for daily life. If you can't find it, you can only turn back and find a place near the water source to build a shelter. He has all thoughts about it, cut some hard wood, and think of a way to make one in the middle of the tree. Uchiha Uranus thought about how the shelter would be arranged in the future, and then took away his hand leaning on the tree. Suddenly, he felt some strange touches in his palm. Withered, like a bark, stuck to his hand. Hey? What's the situation? Uchiha Uran hurriedly clapped his hands, patted off the withered bark in his hands, then turned his head to look at the slightly abnormal tree, his expression gradually becoming serious. At this time, he also noticed some strange things, such as the leaves of the tree crown, which had all changed color. Yesterday, although some branches and leaves were not shiny, they were still green. But now, it is completely gray. He squeezed a leaf, and before he tried hard, it was already scratched and broken. The same is true for this tree. It has no activity of yesterday. It lingers like an old man who is about to die. The gap between the day before and today is so big, it seems that time flies by. Uchiha Uranus was stunned. He still didn't understand what happened. How could this tree become like this? All of a sudden, it died. After a long time, he sighed. I understand. I finally know. No wonder I haven't seen a soul beast. They have a keen sense of smell for feelings. They ran far away when they felt the smell of nuclear radiation on my body. All the soul beasts that can run are gone, and the plants can't run. The nuclear radiation on my body is really good for animals and plants. Damn, I thought I would be able to spend the rest of my life safely by running to the Douluo Great Forest. Unexpectedly, I am still a nature destroyer, wherever I go and die. Damn. Slowly put down the package, Uchiha loosened the burden on his body, took out the machete that was still covered in mud and sap, and began to search for the thicker trees around him. He figured it all out. Just build a house here, not going anywhere. The radiation on his body can obviously help him disperse the soul beast, and to a large extent guarantee his safety. It can be said that except for people with low perception, they cannot feel the uninterrupted radioactive material on his body. The beast didn't even need to see him, as long as it reached a certain range, that was how far it went. And he also recalled the memory of nuclear radiation, and found that not only animals and plants, water sources, nuclear radiation can also pollute, that is to say, he didn't touch the water source just now, but after the whole night of yesterday, this forest the lake is already his Uchiha Uranus shape. Even if he leaves, the radiation is still there. As long as the other spirit beasts are directly infected by the water in this lake, they will die faster by drinking a few more mouthfuls. And for the soul beasts that have eaten and drank the water here, the radiation will continue to transfer, and then produce mutations in the body, or enter the countdown to life. This is terrifying. He himself is a walking nature destroyer. So he didn't leave anymore, just stay here, anyway. No soul beast would come to trouble him. He would slowly build his own shelter, then learn the knowledge of books, and practice quietly. When he reaches the level of 20th spirit power, and then think of a way to kill the spirit beast, he is already like this: just find a spirit beast, and don't fight for hegemony, or be the strongest in the whole continent. At this time Uchiha Uranus suddenly thought of a funny thing. If he became a king, and one day he held a meeting where all the ministers would come. As a result, in the middle of the meeting, all the ministers died of radiation infection. That's too ridiculous. Thinking about it, Uchiha Uranus sighed. Come on, the biggest soul beast threat in the Douluo Great Forest is no longer a threat to him. It's better to take it slowly. I heard that you can live longer and live longer when you practice title Douluo. It seems that from the original, you can live to 300 or 500 years old. Just thinking about it, you reading www. He thinks yuugonshu.com is pretty good. Although he is only 6 years old, it is still acceptable to live an old life here in advance. An hour later, Uchiha dropped the machete that was already somewhat curled. He looked around and saw that only 3 trees were cut down by him. At this time, he felt that it was really stupid to come without an axe. He clearly wanted to go to the forest. Why without an axe? Helpless, I only have such a machete on my body, I can't wait to rely on my little dagger to poke it with one knife, right? After thinking about it, Uchiha Uranus decided to outsmart him. Since he has a spirit ability, can he dismember the 3 trees that have been cut down first, relying on the explosion effect caused by this spirit ability? As for the way of action, it is natural to create a trap next to the tree, then push the tree over, let it press on the trap, and trigger it directly. After confirming his idea, he immediately took action. It was not difficult to create a spirit ability trap. It was similar to a game. After reading the article first, it appeared in his hand, and finally found a place to put it. With his soul power, he can put up to 3 to 4 traps a day. No matter how many he has, he will not be able to consume more soul power. Fortunately, this trap is powerful enough, just a stab, and he succeeded. The tree exploded. Although there were many blemishes on the surface, which were caused by small stones scattered after the explosion of the stone, it had achieved his goal of separating the crown and the trunk. The trunk can be used to lay the foundation for the house, and what can the crown be used for? Fortunately, this is a spirit-powered world. If he is just a 6-year-old child in the modern world, let alone dragging a tree trunk to a designated position, he will not even be able to cut trees under the sun, but unfortunately, he has written the child with dual blessings of Wheel Eyes and Spirit Ring. At this age alone, he is already invincible. A little more than 2 hours later, the sun in the sky stood at the highest position, radiating light and heat wantonly, and the time came to noon. Uchiha wiped his sweat, looked at the tree trunks standing in the designated position, and nodded with satisfaction. That's right, as long as 10.5 days pass, this simple house will probably be completed. But there is the biggest problem, he lacks tools. The logging just now caused him a lot of trouble. The knife was sharp, and there was no logging tool in his hand, and there was no tool for handling logging tools. This made him very embarrassed. It is too comfortable to come to the forest with piles of props, and it will not be as helpless as the situation is now. Hey, take a break and eat something. There was no way, and I didn't bring a system over. After putting all the wood in place, peel off the bark in the afternoon and let it dry for a few days. Then he can start to lay the foundation. Starting tomorrow, he will go to other places and find a way to get some tools. Thinking like this, soon one day passed. It's not difficult to peel the bark. He has a dagger, the length is just right, and the bark is easy to handle, even after a day of sweating. Fortunately, there is a forest lake nearby that can be solved. In the evening, he took a bath directly downstream. If the water would not flow by itself, he would not dare to take a bath where he would drink in the future. It's night time. Just like yesterday, he is still where he was yesterday. Although the tree is almost dead, it is still okay to provide a little sleep environment. Although the weather is hot now, it doesn't matter to sleep outside. Take the sky as the cover and the floor as the seat. It's interesting to think about it. But only to think about it. Whenever it was late at night, he began to remember his life in the clan. Perhaps it is because people are social animals with rich language, body movements, and their own thoughts. When a person is alone, without communication, or communication, it is easier to fall into memories. It is true that there is no living thing with him, and it is really boring to live alone, but he also came here because he wanted to stay away from other living things and prevent himself from harming others unconsciously, didn't he? Asked himself inwardly, Uchiha Uranus could feel a trace of peace of mind. Yes, he did this to prevent him from unconsciously hurting the people he cared about, and to prevent others from being able to live in peace. Hey, why didn't I know I'm so noble? He laughed at himself. Uchiha Yu fell into deep thought again. Forget it, go to bed, there are still a lot of things to do tomorrow, go to bed early and get up early. Thinking about this, Uchiha closed his eyes and stopped thinking about whether he was noble or not. He didn't have so much idle time. This kind of problem, let's wait until it settles down. As soon as the genius turned bright, Uchiha got up, or got up from the ground. After all, there was really no bed. Today's purpose is to walk around. It only takes about one morning. The main purpose is to collect wild fruits, fungi, and other food materials in the forest. If you are lucky, there should be the remains of the hunted soul beast. Of course, in his vision, it should be more to explore the nearby terrain, whether there are any nests of birds, maybe you can dig out a few bird eggs to eat. He set himself this forest lake as the center point, surrounded by 4 directions, of which the south is the direction where he came, which means that the south is the rain forest, not to mention the animals and plants, even mosquitoes are not there, and there are few resources. Distressed, but there are a lot of vines, and I have to go there when I have time. After all, some thin vines can be used as a strong rope, and even when they are old, they can also be used as wicker chairs. There are many uses, depending on how they are used. The only ones left to go are to the north, west, and east. Of these, going to the east is the easiest way, and it's very close. The west is more troublesome, you have to go around a whole forest lake to get there, and the north is okay, it's not very detour, but it's not close. After thinking about it, I first went to the east to see the situation. After understanding his own nuclear radiation, Uchiha Uranus was completely relieved, as if he had taken a reassurance. For now, he can be in this 10 years. The area of the 100 years soul beast has gone sideways. As for the more terrifying 1000 years soul beast, the area of the 10,000 years soul beast, just think about it, and don't use your delicate body to challenge the mouth of the soul beast. The survival version is over, now it is Minecraft version. Things should not be too late, Uchiha Uranus set out immediately, except for the necessary machete and the empty package, nothing else on his body. Other things were left in the open space, so that he would not burden himself. Splitting the branches and leaves, stepping over the rocks, the boy gradually entered the forest. Uchiha Uranium's main purpose is food, so his attention is mainly on the tree canopy, to see if there is any bird's nest. He gave up the soul beast, ran too fast, he might smell his nuclear radiation a few kilometers away. Smell, and then ran away, just like before, not even a beast's shadow could be seen. Trees stand upright, and the deeper the uranium discovery goes into the forest, these trees become taller and thicker. Some trees can even reach 50 or 60 meters in his rough estimate, and they literally soar into the sky. The sunlight doesn't shine through like a column here. I don't know when the forest begins to diffuse a faint mist. Under this fog, the sunlight also becomes a little weak. The fog is still full of fresh breath of vegetation. Although birds and beasts are not seen, the crisp sound of water and the cracking sound of leaves on the ground make the forest more quiet. Soon after, the boy went deep into the forest, with trees on all sides. Uran stopped and looked around. Although there was some fog, the problem was not too big, and it wouldn't make people lost. He will make some imprints so that he can't come back if he can. He used a dagger to cut out traces on the tree trunk close to the ground, then looked around, brought a few more stones, and put up an arrow sign, pointing to the way back. This is to prevent getting lost. In fact, he still wanted to draw a map, but he didn't have tools like pen and paper, and he didn't have animal skins or charcoal on his body. He couldn't remember so much terrain just by his brain. After placing the road signs about 8 times, something strange finally appeared in the cookie-cutter forest. Originally, when he saw that the tree canopy was too high, he gave up the way of digging out bird eggs. Now walking in the forest is more like wandering, but he did not expect that he tripped and fell to the ground as he walked. When he patted the dirt on his body and stood up from the ground, he realized that something was wrong. A section of white tree roots, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com, was at his feet. White? With doubts, Uranium began to plow the soil, first digging both sides, and then grabbing the roots. After a while in silence, he pulled out all the problematic roots in one breath. It was a pale skeletal bone, about 2 meters long, curved in shape and semicircular, with sharp ends and a little rounded top. According to Uranium's speculation, it might be an unknown soul beast rib. There is one, are there others? With this guess, the Uranium began to circle around to confirm the situation. It is surrounded by ordinary woodland, but it seems that this kind of landform will only be produced after transformation. Uranium observed the surroundings and found obvious mud faults. It does not mean that the difference is great, but it looks like new soil and old soil. If you don't look closely at the difference between the soil, you will miss this detail, but Uranium is a good example of Wuhan. In terms of eyesight alone, he has never seen anyone better than Shilanyun. After looking for a while, Uranium came to a conclusion. This is the predator ground for a certain high-level soul beast. Once there was an unlucky soul beast that was caught and eaten. It was very big, but not necessarily able to fight. After eating this soul beast, the predator digs the soil again. The bones were covered up. This reminded him of domestic cats. After pulling them, they would cover them with cat litter, or the domestic dogs would also have this situation. They would first kick a shallow hole with their hind legs outside, and then kick the dirt after pulling them. Although it may not be deep enough to be buried on the top of Baba, it is a habit anyway. This kind of guessing made Uran nod his head, thinking that he was too smart, but suddenly he was stunned again. This is to bury after eating, which is completely different from the example he gave. In these years, there are high-quality soul beasts that will bury their bodies after eating others. More than an hour has passed since the previous soul beast bone incident. He simply placed the markers around and moved on. Time is precious. There are some bones of this soul beast that can be used. It will not be too late to converge when he returns. The most important thing is to check the food source first. Otherwise you will starve. The fog in the forest gradually faded, and as the sun became more and more intense, it quickly disappeared without a trace. In addition to the bones of the soul beast that he had just seen, he also saw some interesting scenes along the way. A deer-shaped soul beast rushed towards him all the way while escaping, and he was so scared that he thought he was going to die here. Forgive him for having never experienced a battle. At that time, a soul beast rushed over at a speed of 80 miles, and it was a bit dumbfounded to change to anyone. Later, the soul beast itself was frightened by the radiant breath. The deer's feet slipped on the stone, and its head directly landed on the ground. The antlers were in close contact with the gravel under the stone, and it fell out of a face. Gee, it's as exciting as speeding and skidding. In the blink of an eye, a black shadow appeared near the corpse of the soul beast, leaping heavily on the dead soul beast, and then realized that the prey had died, before Uchiha Uran returned to his mind to see this one. What kind of soul beast? This four-legged soul beast that resembles a wild wolf or a leopard immediately flied. Is not flying in the literal sense, but the carnivorous soul beast that stepped on the corpse arched in fright and jumped to the ground. Then it used all four legs together, and it seemed to escape. It escaped from Uchiha's field of vision faster than before, with twists and turns, stunned him. However, this incident also proved that he is indeed the existence that the soul beast can't avoid. When the ordinary soul beast sees him, it will not even have the mind to take the prey, for fear that he is not running fast enough and hates him. Mom didn't give herself any more legs. This scene left a deep impression on him. As he remembered, only the C9 jungler in the League of Legends game was comparable to the tricky monster pig. The soul beast right now gave him an intuitive experience. It appeared with a slam, and then Mao was so scared that he blew up, and ran away with a slam. Leaning against the tree and laughing for a long time, gradually Uchiha Uranus stopped. His expression gradually became serious, and an objective analysis, if it was not just because of the terror of nuclear radiation, or if the concentration of the radiation source on the body was not high enough to make the soul beast feel the threat of death, remove these factors, if he is positive and that the soul beasts who only come and go without a trace fight together, what kind of posture will they die in? It was too fast, his radiating eyes had just begun to turn, and everything was over. If it was a sneak attack, it would leave him with no resistance, let alone when he rushed over from the herbivorous soul beast. Standing blankly and waiting for death, this kind of behavior really made him want to slap himself twice. No actual combat experience, no development of his own martial arts, no thinking of judging the situation, nothing, just like waste. Thinking of this, and then thinking of if there is no threat of nuclear radiation, would you die in the forest the first time you enter the forest? Uchiha Uranus looked at the strange environment around him, and suddenly felt uneasy. After judging that his nuclear radiation would disperse the soul beast, did he feel too self-righteous? That's right, if you really live in a stable life in the forest, it is really the same as raising waste, not to mention that the soul beast will not take the initiative to attack him. If one day there is a soul beast, even if it is threatened by radiation, it will be killed. When you are yourself, do you have no resistance at all? Oh shit! Secretly scolded himself stupid, scolded himself for being self-righteous, but fortunately, there was no major problem this time. He didn't have medicines on his body. Once he was poisoned or contracted tetanus, he might die soon. Although I don't know if my soul master's physique can hold it, I still don't use my own life to test it. Now that they are all reborn, I should be a little bit more concerned. Forget it, any creatures around me will be infected with radiation anyway. This soul beast should be picked up on the road. If it is eaten by other soul beasts, it is estimated that it will not live long after eating. Let's pick up this soul beast. It can eat for more than half a month after air drying. Tisk, luck is really good. Uchiha smiled, pulled off his clothes, tidied the hem of the trousers, and then adjusted the angle to prevent this soul beast's brain from splashing on him, and finally carried it up, facing the way it came. Go in the direction. Today's action ends here. There was a deer-like soul beast picked up. It is estimated that it will not be a long time to go out looking for food. If you have enough food, you will set up a shelter when you go back. On the way, Uchiha Uranus could feel the peeping gaze around him, but it disappeared very quickly, probably because of the smell, and then immediately fled under the stimulation of radiation. The bones of the soul beast that passed by before, he thought for a while, stopped, put the deer corpse aside, and pulled out 3 pieces of good condition from the ground. UU reading www.yukanshu.com has no broken and white ribs, inserted in the back waist position, tied with the string that comes with the robe, and then carried it up, and walked on the way home step by step. Is approaching evening. The last sunlight shining in this hastily cleaned up camp, all the plants have decayed and collapsed to the ground in despair, whether it is the dead tree before or the branches and leaves that were crushed. Carried in the evening light there is a sense of lifelessness, and the speed of nuclear radiation is much faster than that of ordinary radiation. This may be due to people. You must know that even in the radiation zone of the modern Earth, there are animals living in them. Although it took hundreds of years for the animals to gradually return, the animals are not very sensitive to nuclear radiation. There are only a few radiation areas on the modern Earth. Animals in the radiation areas did not escape directly after radiation. Instead, after a period of time, after a large-scale death caused by radiation, they left collectively because of panic this area. The question is, how high is the radiation intensity on his body? can actually dispel the soul beast directly. This is difficult to measure, but it is obvious that at least his life will not be disturbed by endless soul beasts, and it is limited to this. If he takes the initiative to find trouble, then the soul beast is also likely to take action against him under the current pressure. After all, the invisible threat of nuclear radiation cannot be seen in a few minutes. The dispelling effect is a kind of warning from instinct and blood. It will invisibly raise the threat to the highest level, so the soul beasts will flee one after another, even if they stray into the territory of other soul beasts to start a fight. Compared to the high-level spirit beast coercion, Uchiha Uranus has also failed to give in too much. Night is coming. At this time, some dull footsteps gradually came from the forest. At noon, the sun is like fire. There was a flapping sound from the lake in the forest, with an inexplicable smell, and for a while, there was life in the dead soul beast forest. A silver-haired young man took off his shirt and was naked to deal with the corpse of the soul beast by the lake downstream. I didn't know where he brought a flat stone about 50 centimeters across and placed it on the shore. The top was peeled off and washed. Deer skin. On the other side is a piece of driftwood that is 2 people long and 1 person wide. It was cut in half, and a few tree vines passed through one of the holes to fix the driftwood to the shore. There were a lot of stones under it to ensure that it would not drift around with the current, and many cut pieces of meat were placed on it. One morning passed, but he simply separated the skin and the flesh, and even the bones did not carefully pick out the muscles and bones. It can only be said that he has never done such a thing before, very novice, and very clumsy. The meat in this weather cannot be kept for a long time, 1 day at the latest. If these fresh pieces of meat are not marinated, they will start to smell bad. For Uchiha who is in short supply, this is unbearable. God knows next time. Wherever fresh and living things will be encountered, it is possible that they will never be met again. After all, his own radiation will drive away all creatures, unless it hits him by the unscrupulous path yesterday. This is also doomed. It is impossible for him to capture prey by normal means. Hey, this thing makes my waist sore. Straightening up, Uchiha Uranus moved his waist and shoulder blades. The soreness and irritation caused him to roll his eyes directly, bend down, and squat for more than an hour, and almost stood up in an instant to make his arrangements clear. Washed the meat, he started to do the next step, which is to wipe salt, set fire, smoke, and then hung it for him to air dry, so that it can be considered complete and ready. The salt was okay to solve, he brought a lot of them when he came out, it was the question of whether it would attract a spirit beast to attack. Although his camp already felt like a heavy radiation zone, the general spirit beasts should not venture in, but it is better not to make a fire, but the smoked meat must not be fired, which makes him very embarrassed. Forget it, the longer you hesitate to catch the fire, the faster the meat will smell. Whether he has a soul beast or not, I don't believe it and dare to come closer. This question was decided after only thinking about it for a while. He looked at the hot sky and thought that he should be able to go to the forest again this afternoon. Although there are no treasures or loot in the forest, it's not a problem to stay in the camp and sit down. There is no hammer or axe at hand. The dry wood prepared before is peeled off the bark. I can't knock on the foundation, I can only put it there. Soon, Uchiha Uranus brought out several small finger-thick vines from the rainforest. After peeling and washing them, they put them on the meat, then used a machete to cut some forearm branches and set them up in the middle of the camp. Something similar to a barbecue rod finally started to light a fire underneath and tied the vines with meat on it. He put a lot of firewood to ensure that the time he went to the forest would not go out, but because of the more meat, he quickly set up 3 barbecue rods for bacon and temporarily arranged 2 spirit skill traps. He took the package and headed east. There are actually many ways to walk in the forest, but today I have to walk another way. The sky is clear blue, and the branches above the head crisscross. As Uchiha continued to move forward, Uchiha Uranus felt that the temperature in the forest had dropped a little. He looked up and looked at it. I don't know when the sun has been blocked by the dense leaves, and the heat is no longer there. Got windy. The trees made a rustling sound, and he felt as if he had smelled something strange, a sour smell, a fishy smell, like 2 caddies of pork exposed to the sun in summer, giving off a foul smell. It's just that the source of the smell is a little far away, and when the wind blows to Uchiha Uranus, it is not so strong, but it also attracted his attention. If he guessed correctly, it should be the smell of rotten meat. If it's meat, then he'll be interested. Regardless of whether it's rotten or not, at least fur, bones, teeth and the like are all good things. It happens that he still lacks a lot of materials. If there are sharp teeth, they will be used in the future. Making a dagger is also a good choice. When the interest came, he quickly started to act along the smell, because instead of walking normally, but following the smell, it is inevitable that he would keep teetering and bumping, but he was also prepared. He was intentional along the way, inadvertently left a mark on the surroundings, cutting a knife on a tree for a while, or putting a pattern on a stone. He is not a dog's nose, and it is impossible to directly smell where, so to find a position, he must smell it from left to right, wherever the smell is strong, then lean on it. Although this method is extremely unreliable, it is still a way. He has nothing to do, just waste a little time. On the way, he also set up a ground thorn trap, and his spirit power recovered quickly. Although it was not at full state, it was still possible to put 2 traps, but he also only set 1. After all, he needed to retain a little spirit power. Stand by, the feeling of squeezing out soul power is not so good. Soul power can be restored naturally, which is equivalent to a CD-like skill. Uchiha Uranus understands this way. When the CD is full, just put 1 away, just like Timo grows mushrooms. About an hour later. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com. The breeze blows, bringing a fresh scent of vegetation, accompanied by a strong body odor. This kind of hot weather is not the time to store fresh flesh and blood at all. Once the shelf life expires, the smell of fresh blood will be quickly transformed by microorganisms into a foul smell with a pungent smell. If it is not stopped, it will soon become rancid. The soul beast came and had a full meal. It is strange that this smell persists for a long time, as if the soul beast is not caring, and in Uchiha Uran's feeling, he may have been approaching. Out of caution, he quickly arranged a place around him. Stabbing trap. Although a little timid, he still guarantees his safety first. In case someone encounters someone, and others see him as a 6-year-old child, and they will directly kill him, wouldn't he die here on the spot? After all, people are not soul beasts, they will be directly scared away by his heavy nuclear radiation. Soon, he found it, and he saw the strongest smell, surrounded by open trees. In front of him was the remains of an old tree. There was a big hole in the middle. It didn't look deep, but there was a strong stench inside. It fermented continuously, and the smell he smelled came out of it. Is it here? Uchiha Uranus did not approach rashly. He first lit a fire, wrapped in leaves, and threw it far into the tree hole. From the fire, he saw a tragic human corpse in the tree hole. Roar! It turned out to be a human being. It seems that it hasn't been dead for a long time, the flesh hasn't been rotten. Before he could act, Uchiha Uranus felt the sky darker. A huge shadow blocked the sunlight, and a huge shadow cast on his feet, completely covering Uchiha's shadow. A giant creature stands behind him. Oh shit! Genius remembers this site address in 1 second. Update. No ads. I would like to thank you all for your support here. Thank you. I can see in the comments that I can cheer for me and keep writing. I am very grateful. Although I had once unfinished a book before, it was a special situation at that time and it will not happen again. I want to apologize to the readers who have read my last book. I want to know what you think about the heroine, because in the future, this kind of heavy radiation can be solved, and I will join a certain academy in the future. I will join the academy. I haven't decided yet, because the heroine's setting comes with the academy. After all, the month comes first near the water tower. So nothing is decided, depending on whether you want the heroine. Another question. The protagonist in my writing, Uchiha Uranus, is currently 6 years old, 2 years older than Tang-san, which means that Tang-san is still 4 years old and is still practicing the purple magic pupil. There will definitely be intersections in the future. But it wasn't the type that followed Tang-san to be a younger brother, nor was it a lip service to say not to join. In fact, it was the arrogant type of fighting together. I haven't figured out the specifics yet, and we will see the situation later. Thank you for your recommendation votes. If possible, I want to ask you to invest a little bit cheeky. Hey, anyway, I don't need money 5 times a month. I just need that. Thank you all. By the way, the update time is from about 10 to 12 every day, 2 changes a day, and if there are special circumstances, I will add changes. I think of this for the time being. Without hesitation, after feeling something was wrong, the fans haped Guyu and Uchiha's eyes turned frantically, raised his arm, hugged it at his fastest speed, and then rolled to the left. The stone stuck in his waist and the feeling of spine knocking on his back made him feel numb, but he couldn't take care of so much in the critical moment. Even if there was a sharp stone next to him, he had to roll over. But he still took a bit slower. A terrifying force passed by his side, as if time was slowing down. Uchiha turned his head, and he could clearly see the hair on the surface of the huge bear's arm moving with the wind, and this huge force was following the bear. The palm passed down, and then, it crashed into the ground like an earthquake, shook up the rubble, and hit Uchiha Urana next to him with his head and face covered. In less than a second, there is no danger, the Stardew Forest and the humanoid natural disaster Uchiha Uranus turned offensive and defensive, and the terrorist attack was imminent, even he hadn't figured out what happened. After rolling twice, Uchiha Yu followed Lideo's right hand and turned around. He squatted halfway on the ground. He didn't look back and didn't want to probe. He only saw the arm of a soul beast, but it was enough. He already knew what happened, there was a soul beast staring at him here. Sure enough, after seeing that the bug was not shot dead, Burst Owl turned his head and fixed his gaze on Uchiha Uranus. There was no roar or other sound. Without warning, it pounced directly at Uchiha. Uranium, a pair of bear claws gleaming with cold light, waved hard at him. Boom! There was a muffled sound, and the hard rock was shot and exploded. The fragmented stones were scattered in all directions, flying around with the scream of wind. Uchiha Uranus was not photographed. After he squatted up, he found the next stone bunker. Then after the soul beast plunged on the rock, he continued to run forward. He can't stop, this kind of extreme power soul beast will hurt or die when touched. I can only hope that it is not fast enough for him to get rid of it safely, otherwise it will be very troublesome. While thinking about it, Uchiha made a big jump. He jumped from a flat rock to a farther rock. With his solace of feet, he climbed up with his hands and grabbed a bump and climbed up. After turning over, he continued forward. Rush! The sound of the rock bursting just now reminded him, and the dull, earthquake-like footsteps made his face change even more, and it chased him. After realizing this, Uchiha Uranus began to slow down, and observed from the surroundings, he could not run the soul beast in the forest. To find a way to gain an advantage from the terrain, it is best to rely on the rainforest environment and the like. And get rid of it. But unfortunately, it is an orthodox forest landform with stable terrain and pleasant environment. The soul beast behind did not give him time to look for it. With its large size and large stride, Uchiha soon heard the footsteps from behind. He couldn't help his heart tighten, and understood that if there was no movement at this moment, he must be unable to run the soul beast, and he will soon be torn apart. It seems that it's time to use soul power, throw it away in one breath. The young man did not hesitate. After realizing that it was impossible to throw away the soul beast at his normal speed, he immediately used his soul power, and a faint white light appeared on the surface of his skin. Then, the black fan's-shaped jade began to slowly rotate in his pupils. A clear yellow spirit ring rose from under his feet and circled up and down around his body. In the next moment, the boy quickly escaped from Burst Owl at a much faster speed than before, but on the other hand, his originally small spirit power began to consume rapidly. You must know that he put a total of 4 traps in one day, including natural recovery. Yes, his current spirit power can only support him to move forward quickly for less than a minute. Roar! Suddenly, a thunderous scream sounded at Uchiha's ears. The boy who had been jumping in midair paused abruptly. Before he regained consciousness, he fell heavily to the ground, and then a mouthful of blood spurted out. With dark eyes, the scream caused an unimaginable blow to him under his high tension, like a drum in his heart. Continuous tinnitus and black spots in front of him raged wildly in his senses, until he fell to the ground, his ears kept humming. Puff! Another mouthful of blood was spit on the ground. At this moment, he was also a little awake. When he saw the spirit beast rushing towards him not far away, his eyes suddenly widened, his brain wanted to move his body, but the whole body is weak. The roar just now is not only a simple voice, it is also mixed with the spirit power and killing intent of Burst Owl. It seems that seeing Burst Owl getting closer, Uchiha Uranus suddenly felt the threat of death. It is almost here. After a short roar, he felt his body feel. Move! Move me! Is getting more and more anxious, and the body consciousness that was hit by the screaming just now slowly recovers, but it is too late, and Burst Owl is in front of him. Roar! The explosive owl, more than 5 meters high, waved its claws, with unparalleled aura, in Uchiha's horrified eyes, suddenly slapped the boy close at hand. Boom! The rubble burst, the dust was high, and the next moment a thin figure came out from it, Uchiha Uranus. The experience just now was too terrifying, even he was wondering if he was going to die here in 1 second sooner, but fortunately, he rolled around at the last moment and avoided the key position, but it's a pity that his arm was still blown by the harsh wind, the clothes burst immediately, and several blood stains were left on his arm. Without staying, he began to burn his soul power to provide speed. The speed was getting faster and faster. Over the boulders and tree roots, the wind whistling in his ears, he seemed to have broken through the limit of his body speed, because the intense exercise was painful. Increase, but it stimulated him to run faster. He just walked through the gate of the ghost. The horror between life and death is as trembling as the heart is pinched in his hands. He has never been so close to death, and he does not want to be close to death again. Yes, he is very scared. Very scared. Roar! Explosive Owl reapplied the old technique, and once again roared that thunderous roar, but this time it failed. Uchiha Uranus had run out of its roar range. Roar! Burst Owl's small eyes were full of madness. It looked at the deserted surroundings and let out a low growl. Then it leaned down and licked all the blood spit out by Uchiha, and then made a sniffing motion. The next moment, it turned its direction, and immediately chased it in the direction of the teenager's escape. It did not notice that after Uchiha Uranus vomited blood, the surrounding trees began to decay at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the soil gradually turned black with a disgusting breath. As the blood began, heavy radiation began to come from around the blood. Spread. Not long after, the towering tree that was closest to the blood position died completely, the bark began to flow like bleeding, the roots began to decay, the leaves began to turn yellow and grey, then withered, fell to the ground, starting from the end a little bit. Turn black. This pollution rate is much faster than the trees in the previous camp.